So what's up, guys? I'm Ryan, and I'm the video producer for One Up, and I'm here with James Mielke, and we're talking about ICO for the PlayStation 2, which is one of the greatest games ever made. When was the first time you saw ICO?
The first time I saw ICO was when Sony brought it by our offices, and I was on EGM, and they told us that they had this new title to show us. We're like, okay, cool. What is this? We were used to all the Jack and Daxters and the Ratchet and Clanks that they brought around. So when they brought out this like weird little game that had a little boy with horns as the main character running around all these like enormous environments, it was really just amazing.
Yeah. I was working at an EB at the time. I remember we got in like a PlayStation Underground demo disc, and it had the ICO demo on it, and I threw it in. And instantly, like, you know, the art direction is really stunning, obviously, and it catches your eye because you're not used to seeing something that looks like that. When I sat down and started playing it, I remember I got to like the windmill section. I was looking at the water, and I was like, "Oh my god, this is totally the next level!" And it was just some like 5-minute demo of the game.
The windmill section was especially cool. That was like one of the first real challenges where you were using the environment to solve the puzzles, and I think that's what's one of the best things about ICO is that it's very natural. Like, okay, well, you have to get to the top of the windmill, and in order to do that, you have to jump on to each of the sails and then, like, you know, work your way up, and it's very natural.
Probably one of the best things about the game is the fact that the environment is a puzzle, but at the same time, it's all like, it all feels like one like legitimate place. Like, you can look over into the distance when you're standing in some spot and see things like the windmill or like a giant tower that you may end up eventually getting to. And what you start to realize as you walk around is like, oh, I've been there, I've been there, I've been there. And it, like, I think there are a few games that really have like such a cohesive world.
You know, you really feel like you've gone all over the place, but you know, you actually start at one point in the castle, and then you go through all these different segments of the environment, and then by the end of the game, you actually come back to where you started, and it's really shocking, like when you actually come back, because you're like, I'm back right where I started, and all of a sudden, everything starts making like this really dreadful sense.
I think one of the most important aspects of the game is definitely the second character, Yorda, the AI-controlled character that you have to basically bring along with you. She helps you solve puzzles, sure, but it's someone you actually have to care for in a game, and that seemed really new at the time.
When you first see her in the birdcage, she's covered by the darkness that the queen later, you know, wraps her in, but you don't see her for what she is initially. But when you bring the cage down and you free her from the cage, you know, and she first emerges, she's like bathed in this like glowing light. She's ethereal. It's just this really, you know, awesome moment that, you know, you're like, what have I stumbled upon? You know, and you don't even realize it. You know, when you first start up the game, you just think like, oh, this boy with horns. You don't really know what you're in for. But once you free Yorda and you call her and you lead her by the hand, it transforms.
A lot of it, I think, is in the animation of the characters. You know, everything is done by hand. There was no motion capture done for ICO at all, but it's so beautiful. And, you know, and part of it is like maybe it's a little bit cartoony or whatever. But you know, if you make some crazy jump and you're standing on the other side waiting for Yorda to come to you and she doesn't quite make it, she falls down, and you know, ICO's holding her up with all his strength. Like, it's just, you know, there's so much emotion in that like grip, that hand. You know,
your heart just like jumps right up into your throat. You're just like, you're freaking out that you're going to drop her and she's going to plunge to the rocks. But you know, if you're on top of things, you know, she never does, and that's what keeps the game from being too depressing.
The one time I really got stuck when I was playing through ICO, there's one room where there's you're outside, there's like a tree on like a top level, and on that floor there's like a bunch of holes that go down into like a sewer area underneath. And so you need to get Yorda up onto the top level with you. You can of course climb a chain, but she can't do that, God knows why. So yeah, I remember just not being able to figure it out, like jumping all over, trying to find something I could move around, whatever, and it turned out that all you had to do was like reach down through one of the holes and lift her right up. And of course it looks like she would have to be like 3 feet taller for that puzzle to work, but it works, and that one always stumped me.
The thing that really made ICO stand out is that in the end is that you got the closure that you wanted. You know, that when you came around to the end of the castle and you realized, like, you know, when you went to the underground cave near the end where the boat that you first arrived on the castle, and then you get that sword, that they use in the beginning of the cutscenes in the very beginning of the movie. You know, you just realize that, like, oh my God, I'm really back where I started from. You know, the things that really had no significance to you in the beginning of the game all of a sudden had all this relevance at the end. It was just amazing how they did it. And when you got that sword and when you went to fight the queen at the very end, it was just amazing because it was like something straight out of a Disney film. Like, you know, he had this sword and, you know, you had to stand behind the pillars in order to protect yourself from, like, the queen's blast, and you were able to run in and, like, you know, get a couple shots, and it seemed like such a dark ending. When you finally do beat the queen, her final blast, like, knocks ICO unconscious, breaks off with his horn. You know, Yorda comes back to life to, you know, to put him in the boat that he first arrived on the island in and push him back out to sea to safety while the castle crumbles down. That's just like an amazing image.
You know, nothing can beat the beach sequence at the end either. You know?
Yeah.
Like, seriously, it's one of the finest endings ever in a video game.
You know, it's a long hike across the beach, and you're like, where am I going? What am I doing? And there's no sound except for, like, seagulls, the sound of water. It's so effective. Yeah, one of the cool things about Shadow of the Colossus is that if you're an ICO fan, you're going to notice a lot of parallels. Like in the beginning of ICO, the villagers is banishing him to this island, are riding on horseback, and they're bringing him to the castle, lock him up in a sarcophagus. In the beginning of Shadow of the Colossus, the main character is also riding on horseback, and he's got Wanda, you know, lying across his lap on horseback, riding through the woods to the temple,
Right.
which is also very similar to the place where ICO would eventually emerge from in the beginning of the game. I think eagle-eyed gamers will notice a lot of slight similarities between the two games.
If you enjoyed ICO, if you're the type of gamer that was, you know, touched and, you know, just has a small place in your heart for the game that they created, like, there's no way that you'll play through Shadow of the Colossus and not feel the same thing. I don't think I'm not saying that one game is better than the other, or that, you know, it's the same game rehashed or anything like that. It's just they come from the same spot. You know, the same core is there, and the gameplay, everything around it is different. And both games are a truly wonderful package. And I think, you know, people will see that when they get their hands on Shadow of the Colossus in a couple weeks.